Thank y'all very much for having me, Mr. Chin. Appreciate you inviting me to do this. I got saved in October 2019, and like he said, I'm not the same man I was, and it made me cry sitting back there just thinking about the man that I came here and who I was and who I am now. And I'm going to do another part without crying, but big reason for that's that woman sitting right back there. Mama Betsy, wave at him. That woman prayed for me and prayed and was a role model for me growing up that I'm so glad I had in my life. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to cry and get shaky. It may take me just a minute. Anyways, like I said, in October 2019, I became changed. That's when I experienced salvation. And, you know, since that time, I've had the opportunity to share my story a whole lot in a one-on-one setting, and I've been privileged to do that. But this is the first time I've gotten to stand in front of people and tell it publicly. So I'm extremely excited. Thank you for this opportunity. I am nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. You can put 150 kids in front of me, football players, and I can preach like a Southern Baptist preacher. You put adults in front of me, and that game changes. I get extremely nervous. So y'all say a prayer for me, and just kind of bear with me as I go through this thing. But thank y'all very much. And I'm not, you know, I'm a newer believer. I'm young in my Christian walk, but God's been working in my life since 2019, and I'm forever grateful for that. My name is Weston Griffis. I am the athletic director and head football coach at Spring Hill High School. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Tara. She's a curriculum director at Region 7, and she kind of just got a new role at her job, so she couldn't be here today, but she's sad she's not here. She's got a daughter that's fixing to be a senior at Texas A&M. Her name's Lainey. Awesome daughter, and we've got an awesome family. I love coaching ball, and for 10 years of my life, that's where my identity was, or what I thought my identity was I was a football coach. And thank the good Lord that he opened my eyes, and that is not my identity anymore. I'm a follower of Jesus who happens to coach football is all I am. And I'm very thankful for that. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Texas. I graduated from there in 2004. And I was very blessed to know from the time I was in 6th grade that I wanted to be a high school football coach when I grew up. You know, there's a lot of people that go all the way through college, go all the way really through life and don't know what they want to do. But I thank the good Lord he called me in 6th grade at Pittsburgh Junior High and said, "Hey, you're going to be a high school football coach." And I never wavered from that. I had a lot of people honestly try to talk me out of it. They said, "You know, you're not going to make any money coaching ball." But I didn't care. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to impact kids. And I truly haven't. I've never worked a day in my life. There was a man at Pittsburgh Junior High. His name was Lawrence Cleveland, who had a huge impact in my life. And I encountered him in the 6th grade, and he was one of my coaches. And he's a big reason I am the man I am today. He's the reason I'm the coach I am today. I watched what he did every day, the way he impacted my life. I knew I wanted to do that. He is and always has been a hero of mine. He's still an administrator there at Pittsburgh, but he's one of my biggest fans, biggest supporters. Still calls and texts me and checks on me all the time. But that's a big reason I decided to become a coach. I grew up in church my whole life. Like I said, that woman right there, I had the best Christian mother that you could ever ask for. We were at church all the time. I grew up. You know, even as a kid in the children's ministry, I was very active in my youth ministry, and at a very young age. And this part, I'll try not to cry too, because it breaks my heart. I made a profession of faith, and I got baptized as a young kid. And the thing that made me sad, the older I got, I couldn't remember that moment in my life. I couldn't remember my moment with Jesus. I'll get more to that in a little bit. But I made a profession of faith, and I got baptized, and my life never changed. There was no fruits in my life, and that always bothered me. You know, I treated it as I punched my free ticket to heaven card, and I went on living, you know, Monday through Saturday like crazy. But anyways, I remember getting baptized, and I kept living life that same way. When I got to high school, you know, that's really when I started kind of chasing the things of the world. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to get up here and tell any stories, but started chasing things that I thought were going to make me happy as a person. And that was really who my identity was then. I chased having a good time. I thought that was going to make me happy. And that would really continue all the way through college. in high school, it never hit me that me and Jesus weren't right because, like I said, I was still attending church every Sunday, but that was mainly because that woman back there was expecting me to be there. And that's why I love what you said, her faith in getting me to heaven. It had to happen in my life. And at that point in my life, it wasn't there, but I was active in church, and I was still kind of getting that Sunday Jesus fix, if you will, throughout high school. I actually went to Northeast Texas Community College for the first year and a half of my college career, and I got to live at home. And so I was still going to church on Sundays with Mama, living the same way, kind of like I told you, Monday through Saturday, living my own way. And it was when I my second year of college, I transferred and I went to SFA, and I moved to Nacogdoches, Texas. And my first semester, I rushed. I joined a fraternity, and at that point in my life, there was nobody that was expecting me to go to church on Sundays. And that's when my true character came out. I didn't go. I wasn't involved in church. I just I put that part of my life on the back burner and just chased the things of the world. Not anything I'm proud of. I'm just telling you my story and kind of where I came from. But I transferred there, and like I said, I kind of got out of it, and it was at this point in my life I can remember, I would lay in bed at nights just tensed up, and God started talking to me, hey man, me and you aren't right. We're not right. And I argued until the day I was 33 years old, and I thank God He didn't give up on me. I argued every night laying in bed, just argued with Him. I said, no, I am saved. I prayed that prayer. I got baptized. I did it, but I couldn't remember it, but I knew I did it. And God just, he never, I can remember laying in bed and just telling Him, Lord, let me just get to sleep tonight, and we'll handle this. We'll handle this later on down the road. And I did that for a long, long time. It wasn't until my third year that started happening almost every night, my third year of college. So while I was in college, I lived in a house with 3 of my fraternity brothers. Next door was 3 more of my fraternity brothers, and then across the road was 3 more. So you can imagine there was always something going on in my neighborhood. Well, all those guys graduated and left, and then I was stuck my last year of college there pretty much by myself with none of my friends that I had. So I went from living in that neighborhood to living in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself. It was also at this time I realized I had been having a real good time in college, and if I didn't buckle down my last semester, I was not going to graduate college. So my focus had to really shift, and then I was living by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment. And when you go from living in that kind of atmosphere to living by yourself, you got a lot of time to reflect and think at night, and throughout the day. And that's when God just really, every night we were having those. And like I told you, I think it was Jacob in the Bible that wrestled with God. I just wrestled with Him. That's all I did, and argued with Him. I did wrap up my time in Nacogdoches, and I moved to Longview in the fall of 2009. And it's just crazy how God works. I did my student teaching my last semester in college at Spring Hill High School. So I came here, and little did I know, 10 years later I'd be back to coach, and then eventually become the athletic director. But I did my student teaching at Spring Hill. Robert Barrow was the head coach at the time. I went up and asked him. I said, "Hey, coach, can I just volunteer coach? I want to be a coach. I need to learn." And thankfully for him, he put me with the junior high football program, and he let me coach defensive line and offensive line at the junior high, at Spring Hill Junior High, just volunteering. And it was a really great experience. He was actually, he was trying to hire me full time here. He ended up retiring that year, and then they hired a new guy. And I don't know how a lot of y'all may not know how coaching goes, but they usually want to bring their own guys in. So I didn't end up getting a job there. But it was a great experience for me. I graduated that December. It's very, very hard to get a teaching and coaching job, at semester. There's not a lot of teachers or coaches that leave in the middle of the year. So January, I stuck around in Spring Hill, and I stayed, and I did my substitute teaching just to make a little bit of money. And then the next fall, I was hired. That's when I went to Troop, Texas. That's where I started my full-time coaching career. I was a varsity defensive line coach in Troop, Texas, and it was a 2A at the time. Now it's 3A. But I was hired by a guy named Chuck Griffin, who I'll forever be thankful for, and I still believe this. That first staff you work for as a first-year coach will impact you for the rest of your life. That's kind of where you learn how to be a coach and learn how to do it on a daily basis and what the grind's like and what it's like. And I'm So thankful for him to this day. And when I got that job, I remember thinking, man, I'd made it. I'm a first-year coach. I'm a varsity football coach. You know, most people have to start at the junior high and work their way up. And, man, I thought I was living the dream, thought I killed it. I had a defensive tackle that played for me that made me look really good. His name was Mike Davis. And Mike couldn't be here today, but one of the happiest moments of my life was last year. I got named the head football coach at Spring Hill, and I got to hire Mike as my inside linebackers coach. So his dad was also on staff there, and just a huge mentor for me. It was here in Troop, and this is when my identity completely changed. So my identity now, my value, my happiness, my worth now became who I was as a football coach. And I spent the next 10 years of my life chasing that. That was the number one priority in my life. Nothing else mattered, and I worked extremely hard at it to be a great football coach. In my mind, I wanted to be the best offensive line coach in the state of Texas. I still tell my kids I am all the time, but that's where my identity laid. That's where my happiness laid, and I'll get to it in a minute. But thank the good Lord, I've said it already, but that's not my identity anymore, and very thankful for that. Also, during this time, church, I was not attending church when I was at Troop. I would go when I go home on the weekend. Sometimes I'd go with mom and my grandparents, but most of the time I was not. There was nobody in my life telling me I had to, so I didn't go. Especially during football season, football was the priority in my life. It wasn't anything else. I stayed in Troop for 3 years. In 2013, the legendary and the late Coach Dickie Meeks, who I grew up idolizing. He got hired in my hometown of Pittsburgh, so I got a chance to go back home and coach with Dickie Meeks, and ended up being one of my best friends. His son, Ricky Joe, who was the offensive coordinator for him, had a chance to go home and be close with friends and family. And when I talk about family, so I got to tell you too about, and Mr. Collier already asked, is Meemaw out here, but I've got a grandmother. I'm very thankful that both of my mom's parents are still alive, and I'm not going to cry on this part either, all right? And in my 11 years of coaching, they have only missed 3 football games that I've coached in. And that's not even the kicker. My Meemaw is blind and has not missed a game. She missed 2 games. She had a tumor in her abdomen and had to have that removed, and didn't make those 2. I'm a big crybaby. I apologize. They're special to me. But they... Stop it. Y'all leave me alone. They get hard, Coach Griff, all the time. It's another side they get to see of me. Yeah, y'all don't get this side of me ever, do you? But anyways, they did miss those 3 ball games, and I'm very thankful that I've got them in my life, and they show up. Meemaw is blind; she can't see, but she thinks the higher up she sits that she can. She can't, so Mom has to get them there early, so they're the first ones there. She has to, help her to the top, and then she has to wait on everybody to leave so Meemaw can come down. And anyways, Meemaw is always the person I'm looking for after the ball game. She's the first person I hug. Win, lose, doesn't matter. Meemaw is my biggest fan. Doesn't know what's happening, but just hangs on to my mom the whole ball game, and Mom kind of has to commentate for her. We've even got a saying in our program. I tell them all the time, don't be soft. And at one point, I decided, I told them, you're softer than Meemaw's banana pudding or something like that. And that stuck. They ended up having T-shirts. Anyways, that's enough about Meemaw. Meemaw's absolutely awesome. When I was at Troop, we were in a district like with Elkhart and Teak and Trinity and schools way down south. And I coached at Tyler Legacy. And we were playing the Metroplex schools every Friday, and Mom took off work early. She drove to U Springs and got them, and they've traveled all over the state, watching me play, or watching me coach, excuse me. While I was in Pittsburgh, it was kind of the same thing. I did not attend football or attend church during football season. Football was the priority in my life. We worked on Sunday afternoons, and I thought I had to be the first one there in the mornings, and that's where my priority and my identity laid. Coach Meeks retired after us being there for 2 years, and then I went with my good friend, Johnny Levere, who I came with here. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I went with him to Gladewater. He was the offensive coordinator. I've been best friends with him for about 8 years now, and I went to go coach with him. Same thing. I was not involved in church during football. I did start attending the church in the off season here in Longview while I was living in Gladewater, mainly because I had some other friends that were kind of stepped into my life at that point and started kind of drawing me back in. And I I thank the Lord for them. At the end of that year, Johnny takes a head job and kind of leaves me, so I hook back up with Dickie's son, Ricky Joe Meeks, who was the offensive coordinator at Tatum. This was a big stop for me in my life, and because I was finally surrounded by I'd always been surrounded by good men, but these were good Christian men that walked in their faith daily and modeled what it needed to look like for me. And I can't thank like Craig Barker and Darren Highlander enough. I needed that in my life. God knew I needed that in my life. I was surrounded by just great men that you could tell by the fruits of their life that they were men of God, and really flipped my head of how I carried myself. You know, I didn't always talk right in the coach's office. The conversations I was having weren't always appropriate, and that was the first place I'd been where that kind of stuff wasn't going on. And that's when I realized that, you know, hey, you can coach and still be a great man of faith. So that was a very, very special place for me. I was only there 1 year. I hated to leave. I was happy. I actually was mad at myself later in my life because I never prayed about leaving Tatum. I took another job. My cousin, Kurt Traylor, got the job at Tyler Lee, the head coaching job, which is Tyler Legacy now. And I went with him to be his offensive line coach and his run game coordinator. And, you know, Kurt has a reputation for being the best offensive line coach in Texas. And he was what I always wanted to be. As a young coach, I spent a lot of my time after our season, I would go follow Kurt Traylor around, and all I did was write down what he did on a notebook, and then I'd go home and I'd try to model it. And I tried to, you know, in the coaching world, I was a Kurt Traylor disciple. So he offered me a job. I went with him. I thought I'd killed it. I was my dream job. I was making a ton of money for a coach. I wasn't teaching any classes. I just coached football, and man, I thought I'd made it. And so, anyways, after that, really there in Tyler, that's where I met my wife. I met my wife when I was 31. We've been married for 2 years. I met her when I was 31. I believe God had a plan for that. I don't think I was a man that anybody needed to be married to until I was about 28. But I think God knew what he was doing when he brought her in my life at a late age. You know, I never could get anybody else to stick around. I always told them I guess I was too picky, but who knows. Anyways, I met her when I was 31. And I was in Tyler. She lived in Tyler, and I knew then pretty quick she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And I also knew what kind of man and husband I wanted to be. So I took the initiative, and I told her, you know, hey, we're gonna go start visiting some churches and find us a church home. And we prayed about it and prayed. We both knew what we wanted. I wanted a church where I could sit under the preaching and teaching of God's word, and I wanted to learn. And God was really doing a work in me here. And that was the first time in my life for myself that I'd made going to church a priority. And now Monday through Saturday, he still wasn't a priority, but I was giving it Sundays. But God really started working in me there. I can remember this was the first time I started taking notes in church. And man, he was just a little old man. I fell in love with him and his wife, but he would get up there and preach God's word, and I would tear that notebook up, taking notes, and I was actually applying a lot of it to my life, and I was excited. It was awesome. I was very, very appreciative of him, and it was here that I first heard the term, your story. And I can remember he preached a sermon. Well, he was always talking about my story, your story. You need to be sharing your story, tell your story. I was like, what story is he talking about? I had no idea. I was like, I don't know, the story of Jesus, or what do you want me to tell my story? And then one day he got up and preached a sermon. At the end, he told a short version of his story, and he talked about his moment with Jesus. And then after that, I knew exactly what he was talking about. He was talking about your testimony. And then I started thinking, I don't remember my story. I don't remember my moment with Jesus. And that's when it really was revealed to me, me and you ain't right. And the most important moment in somebody's life was supposed to be in my life, that I called myself a Christian, and I did not remember my moment with Jesus, and I just couldn't stand it. It broke my heart. It came to realize that, you know, God talking to me, that it's because I never had my moment. You know, what I did, like I said, I think I prayed that prayer as a young age. I don't remember praying the prayer. And I've had my moment since then. I'll get in that in a little bit, but I'd never given my life to Christ. I'd never made him Lord of my life. So I knew, I wasn't following Christ like I was supposed to. And I continued to wrestle with that. Then Johnny Levere, who I've already talked about at Gladewater, you can tell he bounces around a lot. But he came to Spring Hill as the head coach, and I came as his assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. And it tore us up to leave Tyler because we didn't want to leave that church. And then me and Tara prayed about it, same prayer. We knew what we wanted in the church. We knew what we were looking for. And so the first church we attended or visited was New Beginnings Baptist Church there in Spring Hill. And immediately fell in love and ended up joining that summer. So within the year that I had gotten here, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rambling. This is in my notes, but in a year I gotten here, we had gotten married in June. I got saved that October, and then the next May I was the athletic director and head football coach. So it was an awesome year, and Spring Hill's a special place to me for those reasons. But anyways, we started visiting New Beginnings and fell in love with the people there, fell in love with the teaching and preaching of God's Word, and God really started working in my life, and I knew God was doing something in my life, and I would not submit. I was scared to pray for God to do a work in my life because I knew it would work. And I had built a pretty comfortable lifestyle that I enjoyed living. And I knew in my heart, I said, hey, if I start praying for this, God's going to come through and it's going to happen. Are you ready for that? So I've got two guys on my staff. They couldn't be here today. One of them's on vacation and one of them had to take his girl somewhere. But there's two men on my staff that, when I talk about two men that you can tell by the fruits of their life that they follow and walk with Christ daily, that's them, Matt Newton and Marty Mayfield. And I went to both of them on the side. All right, so I figured it out. I wasn't going to pray for myself. I said, all right, I'm going to find somebody that's going to pray for me. And they're going to intervene on my behalf. And I talked to them both at different times, but I pulled them both to the side and I said, listen, I just want to tell you, I said, God's working on me right now. And I want y'all to pray for me. And I was honest with them. I said, I'm not going to pray for it because I know it'll work. And I wasn't ready for my life to change. Wasn't ready for my life to be flipped upside down. I loved how I was living. And even that next morning, Marty came to me. He said, look, I want you to know that me and my wife got in our bedroom on my knees and we prayed for you and intervened on my behalf. And I'm so thankful for that. It wasn't long after that, Pastor Todd, he at New Beginnings, he preached a series. It was a multi-week series. It was called a sermon. It was called a call to die, and it talked about pretty much just describing when you answer the call to follow Jesus, you die to yourself and you walk with Him daily. And it was described. The series was talked about when Jesus called His disciples. It was not merely a call to follow Him when it was convenient. It was a call that required reckless abandon and radical surrender. It was a call to die. And during that series, I left every Sunday and I was like, I've never experienced that. I never had. And it never sat right with me. The same question I've been wrestling with since my third year in college, I was still wrestling with at the age of 33. And I thank God that He did not. He came and met me where I was on October 19th at 4:30 in the morning. And He talked to me like I was one of His kids. And He said, hey, I'm tired of you arguing. I'm tired of you not listening. I'm saving you right now, and you're never turning back. And I didn't. And I remember it like it was. I know now when my moment was with Jesus. And that means the world to me, knowing my story. And I didn't know my story. And now I do. So the next day, I wake up, I'm just as happy as I could be. And then I realize, I've got to tell people now, a lot of the reason for me never kind of doing this was I was worried. What are people going to think about me? I mean, here I am. I'm the offensive coordinator, the assistant head coach at Spring Hill. I call myself, I was pretty much the hammer on these guys. And now I'm fixing to go tell everybody, hey, I just asked Christ to be my Savior. I was so worried what people were going to think about me. And I had that same anxiety the next day after I did it. And God quickly relieved that and got rid of that and said, it's not what it's about. You tell. So that night, I told my wife, we hugged, we cried. And then the next day, I realized, my first act of obedience was I felt I needed to get baptized. And so I struggled with that. And I was going to call Pastor Marcus, who is the youth minister at New Beginnings, who's a very close friend of mine. He's very involved in our program. He does all our devotionals during football season. And I was going to call him and get baptized. put it off all day. So right before practice, and all this happened during football season, which was another great thing. So I'd convinced myself I'll call him tonight after practice. Well, guess who comes to practice that day? Here comes Marcus. And so I ran over and told him, and he kind of got me pointed in the right direction. And then that next Sunday, I got baptized. And God changed me that night, and I've been growing ever since. Excuse me. I thank the good Lord that my identity is no longer being a football coach. My identity is now in Jesus, and that's the best feeling in the world. It changed the whole view of my job. I knew that God had always called me to be a coach, but now he revealed to me that it was my calling. This was my mission field. And, God was going to be a lot more worried about what I did with my mission field than how many ball games I won. He wasn't going to be fist pumping me for winning a bunch of state championships, although I hope he is when I get there. He's going to be much more worried about what I did with my mission field. And I'm very thankful. I got a lot of these guys here today. I've got some guys that kind of share the same vision, and I'm very thankful for y'all. I want to say that publicly. And, kind of like I talked to you about at Tatum, there's days when I walk down there and there's some intentional spiritual conversations going on in our coaching office, and it touches my heart every time I walk down there and see that. They don't hide their faith. They share their faith, and they're open with it. And you don't always find that in coaching. I've learned that, and I'm extremely proud to go to work with these guys every day. We've got a coaches outreach group. We meet once a week. We do a coaches Bible study. I've kind of been involved in coaches Bible studies everywhere I've been, but it's different here. I don't know how to explain it. The intentional conversations that we have and growing with each other has been absolutely amazing. I've got kind of my spiritual mentor and accountability partner is also on my staff. His name's Matt Newton. He's in Florida right now. But I always tell our players, if you want to be a rich man, go find somebody that's rich, do what they do. If you want to be a good football coach, go find a good football coach, do what they do. Well, Matt Newton's the man in my life who is a strong follower of Christ, and I lean on him every day in my Christian walk. As soon as I got saved, he took me and he said, "Hey, I got a book study I want us to go through, and it's called Multiply: Disciples Making Disciples by Francis Chan." And we met once a week for a year going through that. And he modeled for me what it's supposed to look like. And like I said, it's a book. It's meant for kind of a more mature believer to go through with a new believer. And he walked me through that and taught me what, not him, but through this study, I learned what it looked like to walk with Christ daily, and what my purpose is for my life now. And it also gave us an opportunity to hold each other accountable. We have 3 big questions we ask each other every week. We call them the big 3. It's number 1, have you fed your flesh? So, what sins are you struggling with in your life? And we're very open with that. We talk to each other about that and pray for each other and how we're doing it. Number 2, how have you fed the Spirit? So have you been in your Word every day, kind of holding each other accountable to that? And what intentional conversations have you had this week? So it gives us, if I know we're meeting on a Wednesday and I get to Tuesday and I hadn't had any Spirit, if I hadn't been talking about Jesus, I better get to talking to somebody about Jesus a little bit. So that's been a great asset in my life. We just finished up, and now he's pushing me now, and that's what I'm fixing to do next. He's pushing me, hey, now it's your turn to go do that study with somebody else. God's good. He changed me. I'm a sinner saved by grace, and my story isn't over, but that's kind of where I am now. So I'll let you go with that. Appreciate you having me, Mr. Trent.